What's up, guys? This is Tech and Flow. I'm your host, Xavier Gray. The aim of Tech and Flow is to explore the world of tech, discuss trends and big ideas that are shaping how consumers and businesses interact with technology. Join us as we interview successful tech entrepreneurs and software engineers. We hope you enjoy the ride and learn something along the way.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Tech and Flow. If you've watched any of the episodes up until now, you've heard a name mentioned probably 10, 15 times at least. And so I figured if someone's name was mentioned that many times in a podcast without even being on the podcast or in a room or anything, then it was probably a wise idea to get that guy on the podcast. And so, a little background, Dale and I, we met probably 8 months ago. I was sitting in a coffee shop. I'm going to mention another name, with Angelia Kennedy. And she's an awesome woman. If you don't know her, Google her. And she's like, I've got this guy you need to meet, Xavier. So she gets up and goes to the back of the coffee shop. And Dale was ducked off in the corner doing something. I have no idea. But ducked off in the corner. And she invites him over. And we talk for 5 minutes. And then I think we got connected on LinkedIn. And before I knew it, I was at 5 of his events. Who knows how many. So anyways, I'll let him introduce himself, but this is Dale Dupree.
Thanks, man.
Yes.
It was, I think it's been 3 events. LinkedIn Local Orlando, which shout out to James Carberry, Lucas McCurdy, and Patrick Hodgkin. We were the founders of LinkedIn Local Orlando. It's been stolen from us since, just for the record.
Lorena and Mandy are doing some serious things.
Ain't nobody ask us, but whatever. We were getting 50 people out a night, but no big deal. But then the Rebellion rallies. That's what we've been doing the last couple times.
I think it's 4 though, because then the sales game
right,
too.
Dude.
The sales
You're
game.
right, the sales game too. So we got 4. Yeah.
Okay. So I knew it was somewhere in those range of numbers. So anyways.
Yeah. So, people probably already know who I am because of this podcast, because a bunch of people have been saying my name. But yeah, like Xavier said, my name's Dale Dupree. I run a little company called the Sales Rebellion here in Orlando. I'm actually a year in. It's still a startup technically, but sold copy machines for the last 13 years. Shout out to copy machines for providing me a great income for the last 13 years. My story goes back to my father, though. 1984, he started his copier firm, and I was born in 85. So we like to say that toner runs in my blood. And people that are listening, what's interesting is that people that are listening, especially those that are in the copier industry, they know exactly what we truly mean by that, which is that in the copier world, you typically find father-son, father-daughter, mother-daughter, mother-son businesses.
Interesting.
It's wild, dude. But it was a way for entrepreneurialism to take place inside of a family culture, where you weren't just doing this one thing like financial advising, right? You had to do so much more inside of that. So just selling a copier, there's sales involved in that, right? But then it needed service and maintenance, and so there was this technical aptitude that had to come from that, and being good with your hands, and then you had to bill people, right? So then you had to have somebody that was good with numbers on the back end. But then you needed even more structure inside that. So it was very similar to running larger scope or scaled businesses.
But you didn't have to have the overhead or the overarching building or structure that a lot of those other businesses did.
Dude, you could do it out of your garage. And that's actually how most of the biggest companies got started, was that they were just working out of their garage. As a matter of fact, there's still people today in the copier culture that are just technicians, basically, that own the business and that can sell somewhat decently, and so they just run out of the garage, bro. They bring the machines in there to fix them if they need to. They ship and order everything directly to the garage, and then they just pull a trailer on the back of a minivan to get it delivered. But that's a little inside scoop on the copier world there.
I've never told you this, but my uncle actually works for Ricoh and has worked for Ricoh for a while.
Shout out.
And let's rewind probably 5 or 6 years ago. He was trying to get me on a Ricoh. And I had a couple different interviews. I even went to his office space, interviewed with some guys out. This is when I was in Tampa. And I almost was in the copy machine business myself.
Dang, son.
Yeah.
It was a great experience, bro. I'll tell you that I learned a lot in selling copiers. But I think what I learned the most was, which is what has helped me today and what created the sales rebellion to begin with, was the power of a relationship as opposed to the power of a product or a transaction at that. So I learned how to become more intimate with people, how to share my story, how to listen very intently, because intentionality inside of sales and inside of business in general is extremely important. And what we don't teach that in a sales capacity in some cases. What we teach is to be intentional about your quota or the amount of calls you need to make today, but we don't talk about the intentionality of how we're treating or listening to someone on the other end, because they're just a number in the sales game in most cases, or they are a commission check, right, to most people. So I sat around in rooms with guys that they would say, I usually make $1,000 every time I sell something, right? That's how they would gauge their sales career, how many people they were going to talk to today, or from that perspective, right? And what was interesting about that to me is that I thought, well, I just want to have a bunch of friends, and this was me, young Dale talking, right? But I'm glad I felt that way, because over the years, that's what I progressed into, was being able to be somebody that was more community minded and inclusive, because I stopped looking at people as $1,000 a piece. And that opened up doors for me that I can't even explain, bro, because I was making a lot of money as a copier salesman. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed of what I did and my hard work that I put into it. But I stopped putting a price tag on people and started allowing them to understand my worth and giving them the option to make me money, right? And making it a two-way street.
So I think that's a perfect sort of lead, into talking about something that I think is relevant here. The aim of technology in many cases is the intent is to try to find ways to connect us to either an experience or connect us to people, which ultimately is an experience, more efficiently. And so if we rewind for a second, you think of Facebook, you think of MySpace, you think of all these different tools that are now the largest companies in the world. The community that you're talking about, the mindset change that you're talking about, that's essentially was the beginning aim of a lot of these different platforms. Expound upon that thought.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what we're really looking at here in sales is a shift in 2020, a massive shift, especially with the tech space. I think that the massive shift is, a lot of people look at it as okay, innovate something in the technology world so that you can provide convenience for people and an ROI. Like, dude, nobody even knows what ROI stands for anymore, right? Because it's been muddied so much throughout the years. And so people are looking, what they're truly looking for is impact. If I can get on the street corner here and press a button on my phone and suddenly I have a ride to a place that I need to go, there's impact in that. It's not just convenience. It's not just dude, they could charge me $100 if I really needed to get to that place. It wouldn't matter to begin with, right? So I believe truly that tech is innovating toward a place where it impacts people, and if salespeople, if they're smart and they're listening, they will start to head in that direction as well too, and get away from this transactional side. See, the thing is that people say all the time, they say, well, you can't please everybody and not everybody can be your friend. Truth. Mm-hmm. Amen to that, right? Because that's how you find your tribe.
Does that mean you stop trying?
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly.
Because you'll hear the person say that when they're at the point of near desperation or frustration. I'll raise my hand, being annoyed with certain people or being annoyed with certain prospects. And so then it becomes this thought process of, oh, let's get back to the numbers. Not everybody's going to become my client.
Right.
Can't please everybody. But then, going to the point of, well, what could I have done differently in that situation? And not to win the person over, but what could I have done different, period, so that the next person I talk to, I don't make the same mistake.
Right. and really it's about playing the long game, because I can't tell you how many times in my walk that I would lose a deal, but I would win it the next time or over the course of the next 2 times. And the thing is that if you just maintain that relationship and that touch and that contact with individuals and not companies and not the product that you're trying to sell them, they'll remember you. You will impact them. And at some point they'll say, dude, I don't know why we haven't gone with him. And most of the time they'll say it was the price. Right, because there was a culture shift at some point, even in my career, where people were looking. Let's just go back to 2008 during the crash. everybody needed to save money. That's all they cared about, right? But in the process of doing that, they almost collapsed their own businesses when it came to internal processes. In 2012 and 13, I can remember those were some of my best selling days when it came to volume and it came to the amount of deals that I wrote, and mostly because everyone was trying to clean up the mess that they created for themselves, right?
Which those were good market years for both real estate and the stock market. And so, yeah, those were the years that businesses were really starting to regain that momentum again. So it makes sense. So kind of going a step further, you talked about playing the long game, talked about community and building the relationships. What are some of the tools that you feel like you can use? And you can answer with the obvious questions, but what are some of the tools that you feel like are valuable within your world or your former world for networking with the people that you want to network?
Yeah, and I'll answer that by saying it works in my former world and in the sales training world as well too. And it also, honestly, it works in all sales capacities, unless you have a specific niche, right, where you have honed into this one sector or group of people that you can help. That any form of social, for example, or any form of face-to-face contact with individuals is extremely good for you and where the sales world is headed and how you can be at the forefront of it. But so here's the problem, is that a lot of people are looking at networking and they say, cool, I'm going to go and I'm going to network and I'm going to get a lead and I'm going to sell everybody in the room. That's what people say, right? Or people look at social and they go, cool, I have access to 500 million people on here. And so I'll just find, 20 that want to buy something. But in the process, I'll burn 10,000 bridges.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would say that is relevant and as impactful as a place like LinkedIn could be, because it's created a massive amount of success for myself. 90% of our sales in 2019 and 100% in 2020 so far have come from LinkedIn. So you can build a massive business, using social and interacting with people and humanizing the process again is the concept here. The problem is that most people look at social and they say, again, let me just blanket message a bunch of people and say, hey, I'm really interested and we have 200 mutual connections and, I see that you do this and I bet we could do some stuff together. Like, to me, I look at those as very generic pitches. I look at those as the same way that people hate telemarketing, right? I see that as the new telemarketing, right? Think of it as solicitation, right? That nobody ever liked a solicitation, right? And my friend Josh Roth was just talking about this recently, where he was saying that, when you were walking down a strip, 20, 30, 40 years ago even, and to the left was this big sign that said, so-and-so company. And over here was this other big neon sign that said this, cigarettes, cheap cigarettes, right? That those were these advertisement concepts, right? That they sucked you in, the weak-minded for the most part, right? And like most of us got annoyed by that stuff. Like, God, like this is the worst advertising. Why are people trying to do it this way? And in today's world, it's the LinkedIn DMs and the Instagram DMs that we get from people that are so generic and they're just so desperate to get something, right? It just feels like it feels cheap at the end of the day. I want to feel like I'm worth something. And it has to start with the outreach. If you don't make me feel good about who I am and what I'm doing to some capacity, even if you're also trying to pull a little pain and say at the same time as making me feel good that it could be better, based on these couple of things that I bet that we could come up with some good ideas for when it comes to your business, right? If we don't lead that way, if we lead more with me as sales reps, right? And it shows up in our messaging when it comes down to it, dude, when it's just a literal point and click, like generically, like, oh my God, I love what you're doing. What am I doing? That's what I always want to ask people. Like, what am I doing? You love what I'm doing? What am I doing? And then it's funny because it'll take like 4 days for someone to respond. And I think to myself, first off, you're just sending generic crap.
100 messages a day.
And now that it's taken you 4 days, I feel that way. And now I can see that you've just gone through my profile and learned all about me probably at this point, thinking like, oh, cool, I can tell this guy what he does, like now that he's asked me. And I can see it in that too, though, because you're so desperate to get to the end result, the sale, that when I ask that question, you give me exactly what I need to know about you in most cases.
That's a loaded answer for sure. That's a loaded response. It's interesting because I feel like, again, man, this shout out to Darcy and Steve, man. Darcy and Steve pulled off a really awesome event, the sales game. Was that in October?
Yep.
October, yeah, of last year. And there were 4 principles. I didn't forget them. No, I didn't forget them. I take that back. But the 2 that really stood out to me was awareness of self and awareness of others. And so it's funny. You listen to any of the notable social media figures. You listen to the sort of response that you just gave of basically just showing that people aren't aware of others.
Right.
And maybe even probably not even aware of themselves, but definitely not aware of others. And so because of that, it's like you just said, how often are the things that we do really just about our own personal gain?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about something, because we kind of went there too. In some of our previous discussions with pretty much every guest that's been on so far, we've talked about automation in some capacity, and how you hear of all these different businesses. They could be cloud-based businesses. They could be, just physical, item businesses, and talking about ways to streamline their contact, to generate leads, to connect with people. And so I've come up with all these advanced, computer learning programs, automated programs. What are your thoughts there? Disconnected,
dude. I love AI, don't get me wrong. As a matter of fact, there's some people out there, I probably can't say who or what because of the fact that it's still under the radar with some of it, but there are people out there that are creating software where AI makes more sense, right? Where it complements the human effect, the conversations that we're having, the first touch, right? Because when you use those automation softwares, this is the problem. And listen, dude, I talk to people all the time about this. The thing is that I usually say, what are your biggest problems when it comes to sales, and why are you reaching out to me? It's usually where I start with people. And they'll give me a little bit of beef. But when I ask them, but I hear your problem, but that's pretty typical. Like, where do the problems stem from, right? And because in sales, it starts with outreach. Like, what does your outreach methodology look like? Are you cold calling? Are you emailing? Are you DMing people through social? Are you sending carrier pigeons, right? Like, what are you doing? And what it comes down to in automation is that people are they're grabbing all these lists and they're automating all these messages. And when I talk to sales individuals, they'll say, yeah, I get like 20 responses a month from these automation companies that I'm using. And passively, it's a pretty good number, right? But then when you ask them, and they get a little excited when they tell you that, yeah, I get like 20 responses. Well, how many do you close?
1.
Not even, bro. The average result is like 0.5 because it's a half of a person because of how many people get it 0 and how many people get 1, and it's the majority of it is a less than number. And so automation can be used to help. It can be used to elevate the way that you are interacting with the world, the way that you are even designing your internal business processes. I believe in automation. I believe in AI, but I believe that it's also disconnecting us from people, right? We were just having a great discussion about the disconnection that people have with one another. And the issue is that we're kind of nurturing it at this point. Like, yeah, let's keep disconnecting because it's all about money. Let's just make our money and die, That sounds terrible to me, right? Yeah. There are sales leaders out there that even tell in the way that they speak about their truths and what they believe. They tell people things like, just pick up the phone and keep dialing that person until one of you dies, right? It's wild.
It's interesting because, I'll even say in our world, the figures that you were talking about earlier of how much do I usually make on my average client. Well, we have numbers. We have a system that's built in where it literally can track all of our phone calls, all the individuals that we get referred to, how many meetings we set, how many meetings we actually keep, how many meetings we have a close, so on and so forth. And there literally is a price point. They'll take our total production and then divide that based upon these ratios and basically say that for every phone call, it's worth $10 or something like
right.
that. And so you literally, sure, you could say, okay, you're producing a culture of hard work. You're producing a culture of, discipline and consistency, but you're also producing a culture of not giving an F about the person that you're reaching out to.
Right. Right. Salesmen have a bro culture these days, right? And most people understand this and know this, but I'm going to explain it real quick. It's this culture of chest beating and toxicity when it comes to, because men and women can do it, right? This isn't like just a one sex here. Like women can do it just the same as men, but men are notorious for it, where we sit back and we basically say, watch me be awesome, right? Watch me make all this money. Watch me close this person. You want to be like me? Right? Imagine that your prospect or your client was sitting in that room when you were acting like that, right? You think they would respect that, the way you're treating them? Now, they might watch the movie and laugh, right? But if they saw the way that they were being treated through this bro culture of sales on the internal side, they wouldn't like it. Matter of fact, that's why the year 2020 is so dangerous for salespeople, because they can see it now, right? Everybody's posting about it. Sales leaders are talking about it. And the thing is that they're nurturing it to some capacity, right? They're showing videos of them, getting hyped up after closing this deal and making $70,000. And listen, there's nothing wrong with making good money, right? But if you're hearing that and thinking, man, like, I feel like I just got ripped off now on the back end, when you're hearing things like that, like, wow, and you're sitting here telling me that you dropped your pants for me, and then somebody's telling you just made 6 figures off my deal, right? This is a little shady, and that's what sales has always been, a little shady. But now we're exposing it, and we're doing it ourselves in most cases as salespeople, which is pretty funny, right? But I think that's the big piece that's disconnecting us, is that we've created this culture and society inside of sales that doesn't really care, like, to use your words, give an F about the buyer, right? The same buyer that lives next door and whose kids will grow up with yours, bro. We have disconnected ourselves from that thought process, and it sucks.
So, sort of going along those lines, I think often the interpretation is, you say the word technology, and in the age we're in now, we think computers, phones, more advanced cars, things like that. We're in this awesome place, and it's got all these old cars, and we would deem these as not being technological. But at one point in time, technology is nothing more than finding a more efficient way of doing things that were done before.
Yeah.
So I know that you have a number of really creative sales ideas of how you encourage your subscribers, the people that you guys educate and teach, on how to reach out. What is your overall thought, or what are some of the sort of trends or ideas that you're seeing about how to make sales, gaining clients, more efficient, more technological?
Yeah. We need to make sales experiential. We need to cause curiosity. We need to radically educate our prospects. We need to tell more stories. There's a methodology that we're missing that is so core, because you talk about the cars in these rooms, and it gets me fired up, right? The way you're thinking, because what's happened is that these are coveted. People want these, bro. These are millions of dollars in here, right? And a Tesla is 50 grand, 60 grand, right? But it's the most modern, most epic car on the face of this earth. Do you think a Tesla in 20 years will be the same worth as the Porsche that we're looking at over here, and like this Mustang that's sitting in front of us? I mean, probably not, bro, to be quite frank with you, because when it comes down to it, is you can replicate a Tesla, dude.
Yeah.
You can replicate that. You cannot replicate what this does for you.
It's funny that you say that. So last night I was at an event, really awesome event, the Black Orlando Tech. I was telling you about it earlier, and they mentioned this car company, Rivian, and I've never even heard of Rivian before. So since last night, I've done more research on it. The guy that mentioned it said that Rivian actually started in Melbourne, Florida. Who would have thought? And moved their corporate headquarters to Automobile District, Detroit, Michigan, and ultimately, this company, Rivian, again, no one knows about them, but they're making these incredibly advanced, beautiful electric cars, and their technology is a little bit further along in so many different ways than Tesla. So to validate your exact point, would Tesla in 50 years, would we be able to look back and get, that first year model Tesla, I really want that. Kind of like this 76 Mustang that we're looking at, and all these other different things. Will it matter that much, or will there be 100 other Rivians?
Right. It's a really good point. Because I think really what it boils down to when we come back to sales outreach is that there are principles that we have forgotten in our sales walk, right? There are things that are very important to human connection and interaction, the basics behind psychology, behind people, behind likes and dislikes. If you think about it, in the year 2020, and I think one of my students, actually, shout out to Jeremiah Griffin if you're watching or listening to this, he told me that he was reading that the average person will get over 100 cold emails that are sending some kind of advertisement a month. And so imagine, though, how many of your decision makers are going to be getting if you're selling a B2B product and you're talking to a C-level executive that everybody's trying to get in touch with. They'll probably get 300 plus emails a month. Which one are they going to open? What's going to cause them to even care about one of those emails? 299 of those are going to get put to spam, and one's making it through. That's the idea. So when it comes to outreach, it's about getting back to these basics, going back to the value and the worth of humans, of people, of the ability to be able to connect with someone else. There's an art and a science to that. And the thing is that it wasn't always like that, though, because at our foundation, at our core as humans, we were really good at communicating, right? And then at some point, somebody decided kind of behind the scenes that, like, I hate all of you and I want something new, right? And that is literally what's happened to society, because in the 70s and 80s and 90s, sales changed. And some of it was good, but most of it was headed in the wrong direction, because now it's 2020 and people are still asking them, what's the best way to go to market with sales strategies? Like, the best way is to go tell people about your product, right? To have pride in what you do and to learn about others first and foremost. Servant leadership at its core value, right? We think these days that it's about this concept of, like, give enough so you can get back. Right? Give without expectation. That's my challenge to every salesperson listening. Give without expectation and see what kind of rewards that blossoms for you, right? If you have zero expectation of the reward, it doesn't matter what it is. You'll be like, dude, that was awesome.
It was awesome.
Right?
Yeah, it was incredible.
You won't be sitting here chasing your next $1 million check that you'll never find, because when you chase it, it's a continual race, bro. It just keeps going the wrong direction at that. Yeah. So the proverbial cliff is where it takes you to.
Yeah. I described it earlier. It's literally just today I sent a message to my mentor, and I told her, I was like, you know what, I feel like I've set these goals and expectations for myself this year of, the type of energy that I want to spend and the type of discipline that I want to gain. But I find that I can stay focused on literally just the process of gaining that discipline, the process of learning how to master that energy better. But then immediately sort of will get caught up on the results and sort of looking at, is that energy that I'm spending, is it beginning to pay off? And playing that game of sort of sliding up that, feeling like I'm going up a mountain through sludge. And it's funny because, talking about this whole entire thing with technology, and the idea, you hear this word experience a lot. Experience. Our generation, our culture is experience. And, different industries have taken advantage of that. Travel, perfect example. Travel industry has taken advantage of, go create these experiences. Our generation wants to experience travel. Is that really what they want to experience? Is it really the travel part, or is it just something new? Connecting, not feeling stuck in a rut, not being in the same box. And so same idea, we now can look on our phone and experience, we were just talking about it at lunch, experience Kim Kardashian telling us about what her life's like or whatever. One thing that resonates with me, I'm a big sports guy, and I think this is freaking awesome. Adam Silver, a few years ago, about 4 years ago, was on the TV, and I think first or second year that he had become commissioner of the NBA, and he said that he envisioned a NBA experience where at some point in time fans could literally be in their living room, and he was talking about virtual reality and have this experience as though they're at the game, sitting courtside, paying for tickets that are a 20th of the price of those courtside tickets, but they're experiencing that same thing. Yes. So getting to the root of things, how has technology both negatively and positively impacted the experience that people really want to receive? Yeah,
because what you're saying is awesome. It's Disney, right? And like, that's what sales needs. Sales needs Disney. It truly does. It's so boring and bland and stale and just sucky, dude. And so the problem is because we don't have experiential outcomes like that, nobody cares. They just see the same crap from these 3 bids, and they pick the one that they kind of liked more to some capacity, whether it's the person or the process being offered and due to the price. And the problem is that with the process or the price, it typically is a bad outcome at the end of the day, because the guy that sold it to him or the girl that sold it to him goes away at some point, or they get fired. We were just talking about this, right? Where, after the sale, the aftermath, right? That you create, the dissidence that you cause, like the unsatisfactory experience that the prospect ends up having. Where if I could pay $10 and sit courtside, shoot, if I could pay $50, $100 and sit courtside and watch LeBron James, in his last season.
On your couch where it's more comfortable.
Right, like where I can just take this thing off and be like, oh, I'm still home. I don't have to get an Uber. I don't have to worry about traffic. But those things are great. But at the same time, too, that's what makes that kind of experience beautiful also. And so it's about having a balance. And so it's about for people saying this, I'm going to enjoy and I'm going to experience this, but I'm not going to disconnect myself from what this is trying to disconnect me from, which is like you were just talking about, which is, what do you really want in these? Do you want to travel? Because what's the story that we always tell when we come home from going to Italy or going here or going there? Because you can't describe to somebody the view that you saw. You can't describe to somebody even sometimes the food that you ate, even though that is part of one of the best parts of traveling.
Yes.
But what you can describe is that 11 o'clock encounter on the way back to the Airbnb.
I met this person. I did this thing.
Right, exactly.
We had a great night.
We spent 2 more hours. We were trying to go home and sleep, and then we 2 hours later, bro.
We weren't sleeping anymore.
we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's culture, though, right? Because you go and you have a glass of wine around a table with 10 people that you would have never met in your life unless you took the risk. And so it's about risks, dude. That's what the experience portion is, and that's why I love. Who you were talking about, the NBA commissioner. I love his vision because it's risky, right? It's very risky, but it will probably bring people closer to the sport. They
otherwise wouldn't have.
Right, dude. Yeah. The people that are kind of nerdy, but not on your level, like they could be on your level if they would feel more intimately toward the process, right? Because I'm disconnected from sports to some capacity these days because of the money and because of news and all the things that these people are doing. I don't go to the game. Like the people that are going to the games, they don't even care about this stuff because they're like, yeah, but Jim sits right next to me and he has for 20 years. He's had those season tickets for 20 years and he's a great dude and I love hanging out with him.
It's funny because I just went to a game a couple weeks ago, Magic game, and I went with some of the basketball buddies. And when I go with them, we're watching basketball and we're talking about basketball and we're commenting on plays and things like that happen. I go with my fiance, we're not even watching the game. We're watching the kiss cam. We're getting drinks. We're doing all these other things. We're not even experiencing the basketball. So at the end of the day, it's precisely what we're talking about is the whole experience.
Yeah.
Well, last sort of subject, and I know that this episode has been much different, especially compared to the last one. Tom, Craig, and John Awwaler just wowed us the last time with cybersecurity and how freaking brilliant those guys are. But just as one last overarching point, look at the entire landscape of technology right now. Any industry. What is the one thing that really most intrigues you? And what is the one thing that scares the shit out of you?
I think what's intriguing to me right now is augmented reality. It's my favorite topic right now from a sales.
For those that don't know what augmented reality is, describe it base level.
So I first learned about augmented reality through virtual reality, which everybody should know about virtual reality. And I learned about it because somebody was saying, look, you actually don't even need the visor to experience something happening right in front of your face that's not truly and actually there. And I, what do you mean by that? And they pulled out their phone and they said, watch this. And they turned the room into a room filled with balloons. And as you looked at it, it was like, wow, that's pretty intense, right? Matter of fact, I was experiencing that up at Canon USA's headquarters when I sold copiers about 4 or 5 years ago, where they had VR, but then they also had where you could hold the phone up and all of a sudden that Mustang was chilling right in front of you. And it was so realistic that it was one of the craziest things I'd ever seen. Well, the phone is going to be set up, and it could be within this year, dude, where it will have the ability, just like now when you can go and hold up your camera to a QR code and it automatically scans it. Like you don't need a QR code scanner anymore. Yeah. They will pick up and recognize the existence of augmented reality inside of a product, like a piece of paper or a car itself, or, you know, a shape on the wall. They'll be able to pick that up, and your phone will then come to life inside of this virtual world, right? But it's so much more accessible through augmented reality.
Go.
Dude, Pokemon Go is the number one, right? Like that's what's created the push for this in the first place. The gaming community in general has a bigger impact in the world than people know. And it's the millennials, it's us, right? That's who has created that whole entire environment. And we all love it, you know, regardless of whether or not we still game or we did at some point or lightly, we were around it growing up. So it's nostalgic, it's fun, it's awesome, right? To some capacity.
So I was going to say, I was never a gamer, but I know about all these games.
I know them all, man. Yeah, because you're just around them, you know, no matter what. So augmented reality, I believe, will be a big piece of sales, and so we're trying to lead the pack right now. We have some surprises coming out, hopefully within the next couple months, but if not, within the year, for sure.
Listen to that. Hold on. Okay.
Insider scoop.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so augmented reality. That's awesome. That's awesome.
The thing that scares me, bro, is just this constant disconnection. Like, you know, for example, and we talked about it a little bit, it's just the divisiveness of what our culture has become based on being able to sit behind a keyboard and to say whatever you want without any repercussions. To have this whole concept being unfolded in front of us of people basically having their own little, circle of self-worth that turns them into a god inside of what it is that they're looking at. We're like, you can't touch me, you can't hurt me, and I'm right. Is, you know, and that, but the problem with that is that, like you talked about a little bit earlier, is that there's no awareness of others or how you're affecting other people inside of that outlook.
Just don't care.
No leadership. It's this attitude of I get what I want, and I'm going to do what's right. Dude, there's a whole movement right now of men that are pushing back against feminism to the point of disgustingness, right? Where they're talking about women not dressing the way they are, and that's how they'll not get raped, right? I mean, that's a crazy thought that there is a movement of people out there talking this way, right? And the other side is just as bad when they get to that extreme place. And it all starts on the internet, bro, where you can't be hurt or harmed, and you can hear these things and go, oh, I love this, you know, I agree with
behind
this,
it,
you know? Yeah,
and never even see their face or never even know anything about them.
Yeah,
it might be a guy talking, it might be
exactly
like,
right,
like you don't even know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, well, that definitely gives us a lot to think about today. So again, I know that this sort of took us a little bit of a different perspective or a different approach. I hope that everyone learned something or has something to consider that maybe they hadn't before. Definitely thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time, Dale.
Yeah, man.
I'm glad that we were able to make it happen. Crazy how life works. And many more to come. See you guys.